Hello everyone and welcome to the second part of the Python CSV series. So on this tutorial you will see how we can write data to CSV using Python. And more specifically we will check all the methods or at least the main methods used to write data to CSV. So the first method is using the standard file.write, and second method will be using the CSV package and specifically using the writer object. After that you will see how to use Pandas, and finally you will see how to use CSV.DictWriter. So let's get started. First of all, we have our data. As you can see, we first have our header and then we have our data. And the format here is very important. So basically, depending on the format, you will write your file. So in our case, the header is a list. And as you can see, each element is the name of the column. And then we have our data. And each element is a list. Basically, each one of these elements is a row. So this is the first row, and this is the second, and this is the third. So this will be a small CSV just to demonstrate how to use it. And finally, we have our file name. In our case, we will call it employees salaries.csv. And it goes without saying that the extension at the end is very important. So let's check the first method. With open, we will pass our file name, and then the mode will be W for writing. This is very important. If you don't specify anything, we will get an error. After that, we will call our file CSV file. So let me first demonstrate how we can write data, and then we will use our data in here. To write data, we will use CSV file.write. And in here, whatever string we pass, it will be written to the file. For example, let's say hello world. I will save this. If I run my file, we can see that this new file was created. Let me close this. In this example, I don't need to delete the file each time, because when specifying W in here, it will delete basically the file and rewrite each time we run the script. If you don't want that behavior, maybe you want to have a file and just add data as it goes, you will need to add A in here and not W. So now we need to replace this with our data, this one and then this one. So the write method don't accept a list. It needs a string. And for that, we need to convert this to a string using the following method, which is the join. Join, and then in here we will pass headers. So if you don't understand what this code does, is basically we have a list, and what this does is it will take each element of this list. It will make one big string, and it will copy these in here. And then wherever we specify at the beginning, it will put that as the separator. In this case, we add the comma. So it will add comma in here, because remember that CSV uses comma to separate between columns. So basically we will get this at the end when we use this. So if I save this and we try that out, if I open this, we see that we got that results. But we need one final thing, and that is we need to add \n. So you don't see this in basically the CSV when I run no code. And the only reason we use this is because this is a symbol in Python that tells the writer to go to the next line. If we don't specify this, and if for example we write the header twice, if I run the code, you can see that we first wrote the header and then we didn't go to the next line. We immediately wrote after that. However, if for example in here I add \n, now if I run the code, now you can see that we went to the next line. So now that we wrote our header, let's go ahead and write the rest of the data. And we will just loop over data and add it as we did here. For row in data, we will just use this same code. But in here, instead of headers, we will use row. So in this case, we need to use one final line. And the reason for that is when concatenating or transforming the list to a string using the join method, the element inside of that list need to be strings. And as you can see, in this case, we have an integer. So that will throw an error. And we need first to transform everything to a string. And to do that, we can use a list comprehension. We will say row equal to a new list, STRE for E in row. And for those who are not familiar with list comprehensions, basically it's an easy and one-liner to create a new list. So basically what this means is we are looping over the element of the row, because remember, now this is the row. So we are looping over each element, and then we are transforming that element to a string. These two are already strings, so nothing will happen, but this one will be a string. And then we are adding that to this new list that we are referencing to the same name row. And this is basically the first method. If I save this and run our code, we can see that we have our data. This is basically the first row, which is the header, and then we have the rest of the data. So this was the first method, and as you've seen, it requires a bit of cleaning and stuff like that, because this method is not just meant for CSV, but for basically any file type. And we also needed to specify the comma in here. If we didn't do that, we won't get a comma separated value. So we are tricking basically Python to do this kind of stuff. Now let's pass to a more CSV specific method, and that is using the CSV package. So let me first import that. So import, and then I will delete everything in here, except in here I will use the new line argument. The only reason we use the new line in here and not in the previous example, that purely has to do with the CSV package, basically to prevent some unwanted behavior when dealing with CSV package. So whenever you want to write to a file and you will be using CSV package, just add this argument, new line equal an empty string. So now we first need to create our CSV writer object, and to do that we will call it CSV writer. We'll set equal to CSV dot writer, and in here we pass our file, this one right here. So now that we have the CSV writer object, we can directly write to our CSV. So okay, first of all, let me delete this so you notice that we have something different. And the CSV writer have two main functions to write data: writer row, and the other one is writer rows. So basically, when we have a list like this, we use writer row. But when we have a list of lists, basically one list that contains multiple lists or multiple rows, we use writer rows. So let me demonstrate that. CSV writer dot writer row, and in here I will specify our headers. And then since now we have a list of lists, we will use CSV writer dot write rows with an S. So now we can just pass the data directly, a list of lists, and basically this is it. So we can just save, and if I run my file, we can see that this was created and we have the same results as before. So the lesson here is just use CSV writer. It's better than the first method. And the only reason I'm showing the first method is I've come across a lot in some codes and you need to be aware of it. But usually you better be using this one, because for example, we didn't need to clean any data or anything like that. The CSV package do understand what a column is and how it needs to separate using comma and all of that. Now let's pass to the third method, which is using the Pandas data frame. As always, let me first delete this. Let me delete all of this and let me import Pandas as PD. So first create our data frame. And if you don't understand what a data frame is, that's basically a sign that you should not be using Pandas, because Pandas is a whole package and it's used for a lot of stuff. Let me first create a data frame from our data in here. So, and for that, I will set data equal to PD or pandas dot data frame. And in here, I need to pass our data, which is this one. But also I will need to pass the headers because this data doesn't have any headers. And for that, we will use the columns argument and set the headers. So this will create a data frame. So let me first go ahead and just show you that. Let's print this let me clean this. As you can see, we have this two-dimensional table, and this is what's known as a data frame. And also note here we have 0, 1, 2, which is basically the number of the row, even though we didn't specify it in here. And that's a data frame thing. So let me show you how you can save this. And that's very easy actually. I think it would be better if I just call this data frame and not just data, because it's a data frame and that's the convention. So data frame .to CSV, and in here I will just pass the file name, and again the extension is very important. It needs to end with .csv. And since it's a pandas data frame, I need to set index equal to false. Index equal to false is basically telling pandas to not write this column 0, 1, 2, to just write whatever we gave it. So if I save this, if I clean this and run our code, we can see that this file appeared and it's the same file with the same data as before. So now let's pass to the final method, CSV.DictWriter. This method is used when you have a list of dictionaries. So in our case, we have a list of lists, and this is the most used format and the one that you will come across a lot. However, if for some reason you have a data that's in, for example, in a JSON file or came from an API or something like that, it will be most likely in the shape of dictionaries. And in that case, if you don't want to convert your data first, but save it directly, you will use the fourth method, CSV DictWriter. So to use that method, I will replace this with the following data. And as you can see, now we have a list of dictionaries. And in each dictionary, as you can see, the key is a column, for example, first name, last name, and salary. And the values is what's different basically. So again, if you have a data in this format, you will be using the fourth method. So let me delete this. So first of all, I need to import this CSV package. And after that, I need to open a file with open file name. The mode is W again. And we also need to specify new line equal empty string, because again, we are using CSV package. And you will call it CSV file. Now let's create the writer object. So writer is equal to CSV.DictWriter. We always need to specify our file first, which is this one. And then after that, we need to specify the field's name, which are the headers. Field's name equal headers. After that, we just need to write the headers and then write the data. So to write the headers, we use writer.write headers. And you just use this function. You don't pass anything because we've already passed it in here. And then writer.write rows. And this takes a list of dictionaries. So we will just pass our data in here. I will save our file. Let me first delete this one. So now if I run the file, this one will be created. And as you can see, we have the same data. So these are the four main ways. So thank you for watching and see you on the next tutorial.